everyone, and welcome to TaleInferno. This is the first of my new Let's Ignite series, named to show that we are igniting the story together. In the April wrap-up, I referenced writing a story using the product known as the Story Engine, which is a really nifty writer's block problem solver. I'm really impressed I said that first time round. That's not easy to say in a row. Don't ask me to say that 5 times fast. Basically, you pull out a variety of cards that are in this box, which I'll go into a bit more detail later, which then provides a writing prompt to follow. And then, guess what? You write or create whatever it is that you want to do with it. When I used the Story Engine for the first time while I was on holiday at the beginning of April, I gave myself 2 rules. 1, just write. Don't try to make what I am writing sound any good or polished. Just write whatever comes to mind and let it flow. And 2, enjoy the process. And folks, let me tell you, did I? Oh yeah, I did. This inspired me to share this experience with you, to put together a prompt, write a story, however short or long, and then share my writing experience and whether I think I nailed the prompt or not, including rating my own story and writing. So without further ado, let's get into it and ignite the story. So for this first episode, I'm going to provide some detailed context. Then in future videos, I'll try and just summarize it. In the Story Engine, there are 5 different types of cards, which are defined in the guidebook as agents, characters who make choices in the story. Engines, motivations and relationships that drive the story. Anchors, these are objects, locations or events of importance. Conflicts, obstacles, consequences or dilemmas. And finally, aspects, adjectives that describe other cards. You pull out cards to create storytelling prompts, which are meant to inspire the player, aka me today, and you guys as well if you're wanting to play along, to then create something. It could be a story, a piece of art, a role-playing game, whatever it inspires. And there are only 2 rules as per the guidebook. 1, don't put the deck away until you create something. It can be just a word in a notebook, or an idea in your head. And folks, let me tell you, I promise I'm going to do more than just a word. I will try and write a full story. And 2, ignore any card, rule, or guideline that doesn't help you create. Now, with all of that being said, how is that all going to work here? In the guidebook, there are a bunch of different prompt building guides, which determine how many cards you pull out and how you use them. Depending on the time I have and how I'm feeling, I'll pull out a number of cards and build a story prompt. I will then share my initial thoughts of that prompt, and then I'll go into writing against that prompt. Over that time of writing, I'll then talk about my experiences in writing to that particular prompt. Did I like it? Did it actually inspire me? Was it an absolute pain in my behind? All that kind of jazz. Then once I've written it, I will share it with you. Then I'll review it. Look, I don't expect there to be any incredible pieces of work here, any beautiful pieces, poetic pieces, anything like that. However, based on how I feel the story relates to the prompt and how I feel about it, I will give it a rating out of 5. And that's it. I'm hoping that these prompts spark some creativity for you as well, and maybe prompt you to create something. Whether that's a short story, a painting, a song, a character model, who knows? Ultimately, the goal is igniting the story in whatever shape or form and having some fun with it. So with all of that being said and done, let's pull out some cards for a simple prompt today and get into some writing. Now, I don't know how I'm going to edit this. I think I'm going to have like the card shop on the screen. I don't know. I'll show. You'll get my reactions on how I feel about these. But basically, I've got the 5 deck, like the 5 piles of each of the types of cards in front of me here in the box. I'm going to pull one out and you're going to see in real time my reactions to the prompts that start building. So let's see how we go. The first one, of course, is the agent card. So if I just pull one out, what agents do we have? Okay, so on this card, we have either got a healer, a doctor, a therapist, or a peacekeeper. I really like the idea of going with a healer. It gives me that alchemized vibe. Maybe I'll just end up writing a story about that is inspired by alchemized. I've been thinking about it a lot. So at the moment, I think I'm going to lock in a healer, but we'll see what other cards we get as I might change that depending on the inspiration I get. So card number 1 is a healer. Card number 2 to pull out is our engine card. And so as I pull from the deck, what are we looking at? Okay, we've got 2 choices here. We've either got wants to create, in brackets, or improve, or wants to destroy. Hello? Alchemized, anyone here? Who wants to destroy or wants to create something? Anyone? I really like the idea of a healer that wants to destroy. I'm starting to get some really interesting vibes from this. So we're going to go with wants to destroy as our next card. Alrighty, the next one is the anchor. So what are we looking at here? So the anchor is an item, event, or something of importance, basically. So what we've got on this card that I've just pulled is it's either a keepsake, a letter, a basement, or a house. So if we're flowing on a simple prompt, basically we're saying that a healer wants to destroy something here on this card. So they want to destroy a basement, a house, a keepsake, or a letter. I'm really liking the idea of destroying a letter because there's so much power in a letter. So we're going to go with that. So at the moment, our prompt as it stands is a healer wants to destroy a letter. Now we're up to the conflict card. So this is where the tables can be turned. Pulling out from the top of the deck of the conflict cards, we have got, but they must find something they lost long ago is one of the options, or the other option is, but they must accept a loss they have been in denial about. This is a really interesting prompt for this first episode. I'm so excited about starting to write something to this, but I'm also getting really, really worried because this feels like a really potentially powerful story or prompt that I could write to. Maybe I should just write a word, which is just awesome. Do I want them to find something they lost, or do I want them to accept a loss they have been in denial about? I really like the idea of accepting a loss they have been in denial about because that could tie in really well with the letter, because the letter might have something in it regarding what they have lost. That's the one that we're going to go with. So of the conflict card we are going with, but they must accept a loss they have been in denial about. And now finally, we're going to go for our aspect card. So this is going to give us an adjective to put on top of one of our cards. So it could be an adjective to the agent, so our character being the healer. It could be an adjective to the conflict, or to the, what is it called? The engine. My memory is terrible, as you would know. Or it could also be an adjective to the anchor as well. So let's see what we have pulled here from an adjective perspective. So, okay. Interesting. So we've got 4 choices here. It could be a giant, long lost, bitter, or charmed. I'm thinking based off of the prompt that we've got so far, long lost makes sense. So whether or not, this is really interesting. Oh my gosh, I'm really excited. Okay, I am feeling the inspiration coming because I've got 2 school of thoughts here. This could either be a long lost letter. So the prompt would be a healer wants to destroy a long lost letter, but they must accept a loss they have been in denial about. So that kind of really nicely brings it together. However, we could also say that the healer is long lost. So this might be someone that has gone off into the ether or something like that. They're a long lost healer. Maybe all these healers have just disappeared and this person has come back to the forefront. Maybe they've received a letter from someone in a town or something like that, and so they come forward and they have to come to terms with the fact that they have lost this. And I really like that angle too. So is it a long lost letter or is it a long lost healer? And you know what, my gut is telling me I want this to be a long lost healer because there could be some really interesting vibes to be writing for this. So that is what I'm going to do. So that then builds our prompt. I'm keeping this very simple, just doing 1 card per type at this point in time to keep it simple for this first episode. And in future episodes we might pull out more cards, build up different types of prompt builds as per the guide, but for this first one I'm pretty happy with this simple prompt. This prompt that we have created for this first episode is a long lost healer wants to destroy a letter, but they must accept a loss they have been in denial about. That is so exciting, and I'm super excited about getting into this story. So without further ado, I'm going to go into writing this. I'm feeling very inspired. I'm actually really excited about this prompt. When I did this in April, the prompt that I got was very tricky, and I don't really think I aligned very well to the prompt itself. I kind of got lost in other things that I was excited about that didn't quite link to it, whereas this one feels like it could be a lot of fun. I'll try and keep it short for the sake of the first episode, but we'll see where the inspiration takes me and how long the story ends up being. Let's get into it. I'm so excited. Hey, here's my voice to overlay over some super speedy looking typing by me. For the first ever episode of the Let's Ignite series, what a cool prompt. However, the problem with such a cool prompt is just how much pressure I put on myself with writing to such a prompt. I mean, come on, a long lost healer? Slay. Wants to destroy a letter? Yeah, get it, girl. Accepting a loss they have been in denial about? I freaking dig it. So I popped on my headphones and turned on some fantasy lo-fi music to get me into the zone. I don't know about you, but soft instrumental music helps me with my creative writing process a lot. Depending on the type of scene or character I am writing, I try and line up a playlist that will work. Not sure how that will work moving forward with these, as I don't necessarily have a playlist for every single scenario under the sun, but I'm sure I'll find something. And for this simple prompt, a fantasy lo-fi mix made sense to me. My brain was in a flurry of ideas, so the idea of just trying to write in some kind of flow began as a challenge. The pressure I put on myself meant that I was already unhappy when I started, because the first few sentences I wrote, I was like, nope, that's not good enough. But that's not the point of this process. I wanted to feel the creativity and freedom. So with the most amount of discipline I could muster, I forced myself forward and just let myself write. And that's when the fun began. I had initially thought about writing about a younger character. It is easier for me to write about characters similar to me if I am trying to write something short, sweet, and quickly. However, I decided to go for an older character. This lined up better in my mind with the whole long-lost prompt. And then from that, the flow was on. The scene settled in my head and the timeline began to form. And I followed my 2 rules to the T. Just write and enjoy the process. Now, there was one moment of pure frustration in this experience, which was the feeling of trying to remember the word untreated. To get around this, I usually just leave the bit where the word needs to go blank and I'll go back to it when I can remember it. But this really frustrated me and I could not push past it. I ended up jumping onto Google to basically ask it, what am I trying to remember? The word I had used as a placeholder was unmedicated and I hated it. It did not give me the fantasy vibes I was going for at all. Anyway, through the power of typing words into Google, the word came to mind instantly and I was super happy. What a time to be alive. Then the flow continued. The whole time I was writing this story, there was a creeping monster in the back of my mind, which was the letter. The concept of this letter thrilled me, and I was super excited to have it in the prompt. But the problem with a letter is there needs to be words on the letter, and since I was writing something where the letter was important, I wanted the letter to sound good. What I came up with is really simple, but I think it does what it needs to do for the story, so I look forward to sharing that with you when I read it out. Overall, I really enjoyed this process, and I am super stoked that I pulled such an awesome prompt for this first episode. It is so different from the first prompt I pulled back on my holiday in April, which came with its own difficulties. This, however, was so much fun. With all that being said, it's time for the speedy writing montage to finish and to share the story. So, back to on-camera me. Alrighty, the story is done and I'm very excited to read it to you guys. So with that being said, I'm going to go right into reading the story so that you guys get to hear what I just smashed out just then. And I can't wait to read all the typos and stumble over all the grammatical issues and all of that kind of stuff. But that's just the fun of it. Alrighty, so here is the story that I wrote. The breeze rustled the grass at the feet of an old lady who stood at the peak of a hill on the outskirts of a town. She looked down from where she stood, watching as lights began to illuminate as the dusk crept darker. The sun's orange rays dipped behind the horizon, and the sounds coming from the town echoed of a dichotomy of sounds. One was jovial, of sounds that suggested a clanging of tankards in the town's pub as people drank the day's aches and pain away. People cheered and drank to a day's hard work, with slapping of hands on back showing a camaraderie that lingered across the town. But beneath that jovial sound was another, darker sound, of tears spilled and dirt turned as another is buried. This was the sound she was here for, what she had feared to hear again. But the letter that sat scrunched in her pocket, feeling like it could burn a hole through her dress at any moment, had drawn her back here. Another cry took to the air, pulled towards her by the wind as another loss was felt. It shook something in her, the hole in her soul that remained broken. 2 weeks ago, the lady had sat peacefully within the humidity of the rainforest that skirted the edges of the forgotten land. She was long forgotten, which was for the best. Being in that rainforest around the weeping nature, it symbolized to her what was lost. The ongoing ache in her soul that emphasized the emptiness within her. The loss that was felt not just within her, but throughout a vast landscape and culture. For the last 100 years, she had forced herself to forget. The ache, the regret that came with thinking about it. She couldn't undo what had happened, or at least she never had the energy to try. That's what made it worse. The loss of energy. Of vitality. Her hands had once held power that would connect the people to nature. It brought with it life, so nature could show its gratefulness to life and for life to show it back. It was a power that had been shared across many people and had existed for generations, until her hands touched it, took from it. Sitting in her alcove within the rainforest, the letter sat in her aching, weathered hands, thick with arthritis long since untreated. She had seen it drifting along a creek that skirted past her makeshift garden. It was in a dark glass bottle, one similar to those that would house ointments she used to spend hours creating and administering. It was not the first time she had seen something not of the rainforest float down the creek. Most times she would leave it to flow away from her, but the specific bottle that housed this letter had called out to her. It spoke of a time long past, and she had felt the long-lost ache within her soul peel open like a long-dried scab. She had groaned when reaching for it, wincing at the icy cold water as the bottle made its way to her hand. Her heart had fluttered when she thought she had lost her grip, not realizing how important it had been to her to hold this bottle, to own this piece of her past again. She hadn't seen the paper in it at first. Once it had been fished from the creek, she placed it straight into her handmade satchel and continued her day in the garden, tending the herbs she had once stirred into mixtures, tonics and balms. As she had sat at the entrance of her alcove, the place she now called home, as the night drew closer, she pulled out the bottle from the satchel. A part of her had been fearful of it. She had grabbed it on impulse, drawn to it based on a memory of time since past. The ache in her reminding her this was not something she wanted to remember, a past she did not want to face. She looked down at her closed hand, knowing that what lay inside it was just a simple bottle, which held something so much more complex than just a bottle. The thought came to mind to throw it. She would never have to acknowledge it. She could imagine the crashing of the glass on a nearby rock, the memories crashing away with it. And yet she unfurled her fingers to lay her eyes on the dark bottle in her hand, and that's when she saw it, the note, the letter, sealed away by a cork. Her throat went dry. The silence of the rainforest amplified the roaring blood in her ears. Instant regret filled her. The outside world, the people who had long forgotten her, had somehow infiltrated her and her peace. But was it ever really peace? The memories had always been on the fringes. The claws of regret, guilt and loss could only be pushed aside so hard. The whispers in her dreams, the ache she had become so used to feeling that it was no longer an ache, but just another piece of her. With shaking fingers, she pried open the cork and slid out the paper. Within a breath, she could destroy it, rip it to shreds, burn it in the fire of the dry wood she tended to daily to ensure she could stay warm every day within the damp surroundings of a rainforest. Every fibre of her being called her, yelled at her to destroy it. But one small voice, a forgotten one, deep within her whispered for her to read it. It was time to remember. On the hill, she pulled out the scrunched up paper from her pocket and read the letter again. With the sound of cries rolling up the hill to her, the words on the paper called out to her. Please. One word, yet it said so much. The old lady clenched her eyes as she felt the tears begin to form again. It had been too long. She had placed herself under the rug, tried to hide from what she had done and all that she had lost. She thought of the consequences that the town below her and across the land were facing because of her choices. A single choice, really. one that tilted the balance and left the land without the power they needed to survive. She kneeled down where she was and placed an open palm to the earth. The grass was cool and dry, so different to what she was used to, and closed her eyes, and from her lips she breathed, "Please." The same word, followed by what should have been said 100 years before, "I'm sorry." Then she delved into the long since dry well within her, digging through cobwebs and dust to find that one voice within her, the one that she had pushed down for so long and had let the ache keep away. Pushing within herself, she clenched her eyes tightly, feeling the tears push past and drip onto the ground before her. She couldn't find it, the voice, the spark. Panic built up in her as she worried if she had left it too late, but then within the crevices of her soul she found it, a small glimmer, dimly shimmering amongst the darkness that had enveloped and soothed the ache and regret. In her mind she grabbed hold of that glimmer, blew on it like a spark, an ember, to help it come back to life. The power that she felt in that small glimmer made her pause. Could she do it? The glimmer seemed to be asking the question in her mind. Was she ready to do what she needed to do so long ago? She felt the fear of what that meant, but in the distance of her trance, the cries from the town cut through and she knew what she had to do. With one final breath she let go, letting that glimmer turn to a wildfire within her. The power overtook her and she let it. Warmth surged through her. From the town, a young woman glanced up towards the hill that looked over them and gasped. A glow that burned brighter by the second pulsated at the top. In her arms she felt the burn of her baby as it fought the fever that consumed it. She had done everything she could. She'd found an old journal from a long-lost healer with detailed herbs that could stifle fever, ease a cough, and bring a child back to health. And yet, no matter what she did, nothing seemed to help her child. Her mother had told her about the healers. They had held a connection between nature and those who lived amongst it. They could bring balance through nurturing the earth, and through doing that, nurse people back to health. 100 years ago, it had been lost. One healer had taken too much. They had pulled too much from the earth to serve a purpose greater than themselves. And through taking that power, that energy, all healers lost their ability to heal those through the connection with nature. When they tried to heal, they would damage instead. Lives were lost to their hands, and so they were either burned for treachery or fled to be lost forever. Many had died since then, and this new wave of sickness brought upon the town its last life. Her child was on the precipice of life and death, and no matter what she did, nothing happened. She had to accept the fate that stared at her. Suddenly, the burning glow on the hill disappeared and a strong gust of wind blew through the town. Upon the hill, the old lady fell forward and lay on the earth. She'd done it. A single final tear fell from her face and into the earth as nature claimed its debt. And a warmth flooded the young lady, separate to the child that burned in her arms. A voice softly whispered in her mind without words, but with feelings of calm and comfort. Without thinking, she placed her hand onto the brow of her child and with a deep breath felt the pull of the fever sinking into her palm. The child cooled, and its cries quietened. Healing was back. They would survive. So that was my story. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it ended up being a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because I was just absolutely furiously typing. Look, I'm going to keep my review and rating part of this short as it's the first episode, but ultimately, I think I did okay. Ultimately and personally, I think I nailed the prompt. I had a long-lost healer who wanted to destroy a letter. And they got that letter through a mysterious dark bottle, and that letter only said one word. I probably could have written a bit more about the healer wanting to destroy the letter itself. I spent a bit of time writing about the bottle, and that prior to reading the letter, they could have destroyed it. There was probably an opportunity here to focus on the feeling of wanting to destroy the letter after reading it. However, since I kept the letter to only contain one word, a bit cheeky, really, it didn't really feel right to linger on it too long. Regarding the final part of the prompt as well, if I had to be critical, I don't know if I necessarily went deep into the whole denial part of losing the power of healing. I think there are elements in what I wrote that feel like denial. However, if I took this story and expanded it a bit and gave myself time to build out the lore of it, I think that denial piece could have been better displayed. With all that being said, I quite like how the story turned out. The fact I just got myself into the flow and wrote, what came out turned out much better than I realized as I was typing it, as I mentioned earlier. It's incredible, this experience of just writing. All in all, for the first episode of this Let's Ignite series, I'm going to be kind to myself and I'm going to give myself a rating of 4 out of 5 on this story and following the prompt. And there you have it, our very first episode of the Let's Ignite series. What did you think? Did you create something from this prompt? Let me know in the comments. I am so interested to know. Thank you for joining me in igniting this story today. Like this video if you had a good time and created something alongside the prompt. Subscribe if you want to keep igniting the story with me and joining me in this weird and wonderful world of storytelling and joining me in more episodes of this Let's Ignite series. I hope you have a great day, a great night, and rest of your week, wherever and whenever I am finding you. Until next time, see ya!